Hi guys, hi everyone. It's us again. We're gonna try and do this again. We had some major technical difficulties last night, so I've come to a different location. We're gonna try to mute one another. We just had a big echo, and then I froze at the end. So here we go again. I'm Alda from Whole Family Health, doctor of Chinese medicine, acupuncturist, and mindfulness instructor, and I'm here with Sandy MacLean. She's a clinical counselor who's done her master's in counseling psychology, and she specializes in trauma and couples therapy.
Hey there.
So I just want to give people a little bit of background. So Sandy and I, we go way back, and so we met back in our university days when we were both doing our bachelor's of science. Sandy did hers on the brain, on biopsychology. She did her whole degree on the brain. This woman knows what she's talking about. Anyway, so we went on this trip. Here's Sandy in 1997, I think it was, in Guatemala. We were, and here's us. We lived in a shanty town with these other people, beautiful people who are all now medical professionals, like doctors and dietitians and nurses and midwives and radiologists. And anyways, and we lived in a cardboard box. And this was in Guatemala, which is when I met my husband. So Sandy was there, and I have been in my marriage since then, like 1996. So Sandy was there in the beginning when I was like, this is the one. And here I am still with the one. Sometimes he doesn't feel like the one, because that's the nature of marriage, right? So Sandy is going to speak to, it's Canadian Infertility Awareness Week, and we know that it's hard on couples and partnerships when we're trying to conceive. It's just like added stress. And then now in the time of Corona, we're all in quarantine. And so I think all these rough spots in our relationships can get more inflamed. And so I've asked Sandy to give us 3 tips. This is like backwards. 3 tips on how to solve all of our relationship problems. So here it is. She's gonna bring it, and I'm gonna mute myself.
Thanks, Alda. Great to see you. Thanks for having me. I live in Nelson, British Columbia. It's always nice to connect with people from different parts, and it's interesting in this time right now. We're all in the same. The whole world is in the same kind of story of coronavirus. So, yeah. Thanks for bringing those pictures. I hadn't seen those, except yesterday I saw them. So let me see. I have I was just giving some thought. We don't have a lot of time, and I wanted to sort of think of what are the most important take-homes that could really help people just right off the bat. I want to talk about 2 kind of broad-reaching ideas of just how to work in general on your relationship if you're finding you're having some stress, that I think are really important kind of mindset or perspective shifts. And then I'm going to go to 3 very specific just tips that you could kind of do in a real practical way. So the first of the 2 broad ideas is that most people, I find, when they think of working on their relationship, they're trying to, in a whole bunch of different ways, get their partner to do something different, to change. And even about coming to couples counseling or going to take a course, they feel like they have to wait till their partner engages. And that's often a point of conflict in itself. One person wants to work on it, the other person doesn't, and maybe it switches back and forth. So I think it's just really, really important to know that when you're in a relationship dynamic, it's a spiral that's looping between 2 people. And because of that, everything you do to work on your side of that will actually positively ripple out. And the idea of waiting or even talking about what you need from your partner right off the bat actually often feeds the spiral. So I want you to just sort of start reorienting your mind to what you can do, and always trying to focus your attention on your side. It doesn't mean that there's not actually lots of legitimate things that an objective person would say would be ideal for them to change. But you pointing those out or starting with that ends up actually just causing more disconnection, shutdown, or conflict. And there's a lot that can happen if you just address whatever parts and really get committed to addressing whatever parts are on your side. It has a lot of positive ripple effects and will usually inspire the other person to start doing the same thing. So that's my first broad idea. I'm just gonna, because we're on this mutual muting, I just want to pass it over to you if you have any thoughts or questions about that one, Alda.
So what you're saying is to not focus on the other person and focus on ourself. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
And the next piece is that basically everything in relationship when things get tricky is like speeds up. Even if both people get very quiet, it's like the misunderstanding, miscommunication, the perception, it's like a little emotional volatility that speeds everything up. And the more sped up you are, the more you're in your automatic reactions, and you're going to basically do much better on your side of what happens by slowing yourself down. So just sort of the habit of being able to say, okay, I'm going to slow down. I feel like we're getting into some bad vibes here. I'm going to slow down. And when you slow down, try to redirect your attention to the emotions instead of the content, the thing you're talking about. Most people get fixated on the thing they're talking about, but what's causing the problem is actually the emotional vibes going back and forth. And it's really important to basically prioritize the emotional dynamic over the content. So pausing on solving or getting to the bottom of this conversation about this or that or the other thing, and really resetting the vibes so that you don't proceed with the content unless you're in a good kind of emotional feeling back and forth, where most people, the emotions get tricky and then they try to keep pursuing the thing they're talking about. And it's the most important skill is to try to differentiate between those two and collect your relationship around just having good emotional connection before proceeding with the thing. So I don't know if that makes sense, but go ahead and ask me some questions on that, Alda.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is, and this is okay, I'm just going to be like straight up with people here, that this woman has you've been sideline coaching me on my relationship since 1996. And I think we're a fairly successful relationship. I mean, sometimes it really feels like I think the thing about relationships is that there's probably nobody else in my life that I get more like angry with and more sort of irritated. Like there's nobody else in my life who pushes my buttons in the same way as my dear beloved husband. And so what I'm hearing you saying is, so I know a dynamic that we get caught up in a lot is like, well, like we're both we're like crouching tiger, hidden dragon. I'm a dragon, he's a tiger. And so when we fight, it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm right. And I think he's pretty sure he's right. And so we kind of end up in this sort of like debate over who's right and who needs to be heard more. And so what you're saying, so like not to like to kind of like disengage from that debate and whatever the thing is that we're both like super pissed off about, and to zero in on like the feelings, the vibes. So is that kind of what you're saying? And then with the other thing that you said, what you're saying is what you're suggesting is that I stop kind of, because I'm pretty sure that usually most of the time he's doing something wrong that I want him to stop doing, or he's doing something not enough that I want him to do more. So you're saying to not focus so much on that and to focus on like what's going on over here. Is that, I mean, it's all kind of annoying stuff, but I think it's all really useful stuff, because it's kind of like, I think it's hard to kind of separate when you're in an argument. It's all just this big mixed soup of like feelings and thoughts and ideas and opinions and all of it. It's hard to kind of separate it all. And what you're saying is to kind of try to separate like the actual like content, the stuff that we're arguing about. It's not even about that. It's actually about the vibes. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and the content's important. It does need to be addressed, but if you try to address it through these kind of hurt feelings where one person feels belittled or not understood, often people will actually, when all those emotional kind of misunderstanding feeling part gets settled, they'll actually be like, well, I sort of agree with you. Or, yeah, I get, the actual content is much easier to resolve if it's not through this veil of you seem so mean, or why am I not important to you? These kind of core feelings of emotional disconnect, they color the content. So you think you're still talking about the thing, but really you're hurt about the way you're being talked to, or the way you're not being listened to, or the shutdown. So that hurt feeling just interferes with the content. So if you don't stop and find a way to reset it together, where you're just like, wow, okay, let's just pause this. Basically, like, I'll literally in my relationship be like, okay, pause this. I actually love this man. I need to talk to him about the thing that I need to talk to him about, with the spirit of that, where I can actually feel the fact that I love him, rather than that's kind of parked and I'm just on this, and the vibes I'm giving him are that he's totally annoying or he's just a pain in my life, and most of us kind of can flip between those two parts. So it's just really good to collect around the emotion, because then you still have to muscle through these really hard conversations. They don't just solve themselves. They do need attention, but it's not worth pursuing them with the kind of that like mudslinging energy going back and forth. And for some people that's real argument. For some people it's more shutdown.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's about separating the feelings from the content and trying to focus on the feelings and make better vibes. And slowing down, you said. I think slowing down is a big thing, because I think for me it's hard if I'm just, it's hard to separate things if you're just like in the fury of it, or in the fire of it. So it's like cooling the flames. So that's kind of, it's a real practice. I feel like that's not a super easy thing to do, but I guess it's something we can all practice with.
Yeah, it's a life practice. And the more tired you are, some days you're going to be naturally better at sort of seeing through the fog. And often I see when couples get better at not just pursuing the content regardless of the kind of emotions going back and forth, they can take turns. One person can step out first into a good space, or the other one. And then when you see your partner do that, it's like, okay, and that's not even it, that both people went to couples counseling. It's just that it's a relief for both people when either one of you can kind of reset back to the energy of like, I love you. We don't agree with this. This is a hard conversation. We actually need more love in the table, not less, and we might not solve this today, but you're still my person. And if you can kind of hold both of those, like if you can hold that together, you're going to do much better at trying to deal with this disagreement that might not be quickly solvable. You might not be able to convince them, but you can still kind of give them a sense of respect and love, that they can feel that. And then it settles all that other background chaos down.
Okay, I like that. So it's not, okay, the piece about like not solving the problem, I think that's a really big piece, because I think that's like we get caught up in that, right? It's like there's a problem, like, often it's like, I'm not being heard, or, sometimes I'll see that he's not being heard too. So that's important to me. And so I think that's an important piece. Like, it's not really necessarily about solving the problem just then, because some of these patterns are just deep patterns that take time to kind of untease themselves. So it's about bringing kindness and love, and bringing like those vibes back in, and trying to kind of switch. So what you're saying, like trying to switch from like blame to, oh, okay, I'm going to try to stop blaming and remember why I'm here and why I chose you, and to kind of go from there. Is that kind of what you're, yeah. Okay.
When couples are really, really stuck, I'll literally give them homework. I'll give one or the other person or both of them homework to imagine, if right in the middle of this day where you're so frustrated with this or that behavior not happening, how would you, how big a priority would that be if they were suddenly like, you got a call and you didn't know if they, if they were in a coma and you didn't know if they were going to wake up because they were in a car accident. It's like, if you give yourself an exercise like that, you can suddenly put it into scope. where this urgent pressure thing is like, well, in the big picture, I would miss them so much for this, that, or the other thing. And that actually leads me really well into one of the 3 tips I had. So I'll just jump into that. It was number 2, but I'll go right for that. I really recommend people, when they're not in like when they're in their day and they're not actually beside their partner, which, right now we're often beside our partner a lot more than usual. But I really recommend that people do a kind of almost partner gratitude practice in their private time, because our minds are very, very good at searching for problems. We evolved in a way where we search for problems and we hone in on the difficult challenge. And our brains are almost made to take for granted the good things. And so we do that in a relationship. It's easy to forget how lucky we are, what a phenomenal person this one is in relationship to all the other humans. What are the amazing things about this one, and how lucky you are and what you would miss. And so the more you can dwell your mind on that in between times, the more that's kind of right there in your heart and in your energy, you're in touch with that. A lot of the times we go from, neutral to the things that are bothering us, and to just spend time being like, wow. And not just the thought, oh yeah, he's really great at this, or yeah, this, but just really specific. Like the more specific you can think of examples and almost take your mind and imagination to those examples where your partner shines, the more you kind of drop into the somatic body feeling that this is real. And you're not just saying, oh yeah, think of the positives. You're actually kind of connecting emotionally with them. And then when the tricky moment comes up, you're seeing it in balance. This is the part of you I would love to wave a magic wand and change. And I love you, and because we have that I love you feeling in our heart, then when we address this person, it's easier to balance out those bad vibes, and they're going to feel it. They're going to feel like, oh yeah, this human adores me. And all of us know we're flawed and imperfect. And it's really important to have like access to the fact that the other one loves us, and we're lovable to them. And that this gratitude partner practice can actually help those vibes kind of emanate from you in the in-between times. And I think that goes a long way.
Okay, so so you're saying, I like this. So gratitude practice with your partner. And so do you think that it's also important to be like expressing and communicating this to them on a regular basis too?
Sure. I mean, it's no one, the Gottman research is really clear that we need to hear 5-to-1 positives from our partner, positives to negatives. And positives can be the smallest little obvious things, but 5-to-1 positive reflections about who we are in order to feel more open to the negatives. And when it drops below that, we get more like intrinsically defensive. So that would be an example of yes, speak up about it. But if you just did that and you didn't manage your mind, it would be superficial. So I actually think the more important thing is that you're dwelling in that in your heart and in your energy privately, because then it's more wholehearted when it comes up. It's not like, oh yeah, thanks, I do appreciate this thing about you. Like it's got to feel more like you're lucky, the way you are at the beginning when you feel so grateful and you've been, dated other people, and here's this one and you're like, wow, this one is so great.
Okay, I like it. So it's got to actually be like the real thing. There's no fluffing it. You can't fake it. It's not like tick, tick, tick. I said 5 nice things. Now I get to just lay in on like all the stuff that bugs me. Okay, awesome. What's your next tip?
Unmuting. So the other one I think that people could really always benefit is learning it kind of goes with the vibes piece we were talking about earlier, is really getting way better at validating your partner's feelings. People usually have a bunch of thoughts and they express their feelings with a whole bunch of thoughts, and then we disagree with the thoughts, so we focus on that. But if your partner if your partner is in a lot of emotion, I love the EFFT trainers I trained with in Toronto, they talked about imagining that your partner's up an elevator, and the stronger their emotion, the more they're up that elevator. And the only thing that brings humans down that elevator is believing that we are understood, that like knowing that somebody gets it, that it's real and get it. And so our emotions are taking us up that elevator. We need to know that the other person totally understands us and gets our emotions. And that has nothing to do with whether you agree with the logic that they use to get to those emotions. So the statements are, that makes all the sense in the world. I totally understand what that would be like for you. It's, you know, the thing about validating is if you just focus on, most of us validate a little and then we say, but this is like, stay with the validation. If the emotions are high and you're aware of that and you want to get out of that escalated place, if you flip to just, I'm going to totally validate your feelings. All of them are valid. Not necessarily do I agree with the logic, but your feelings are valid. And the more I can just say, okay, that's valid. You have to be like, okay, you have to dig into it a little. Makes all the sense in the world. I understand what that must be like for you in your shoes from your point of view, not from my point of view. And the more I can stay there, maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes as a person and give examples of exactly what you understand about their point of view, the more they're going to feel settled, and it's going to be quite spontaneous that they're going to want to offer you the same in a lot of cases.
Okay, so but what if I'm right? No, I totally hear what you're saying, but I think sometimes it's hard because sometimes it's like it feels like you're just giving up your own thing, right? It's like sometimes it's like I just feel so unheard, and it's like if I kind of switch and hear over there, I feel like it's like giving a lot up on my side of things, and like it's I don't know, you know what I mean? It's kind of scary to kind of just sort of let go of your whole, thing that feels really huge too. Like sometimes I'm up in that elevator too. So like, so what then?
So great. I love how real this is, because that's actually exactly how it goes. Yeah, that's the trouble. We're both up an elevator and we're trying to get through, and it feels like, well, I'll validate you when you validate me first. If I feel really heard, then I'll consider it, but who starts, right? So this is, Sue Johnson talks about this as, the find the bad guy kind of, and Gottman's call it gridlock. So it's this, yeah. The interesting thing is that you're not validating their points, you're validating their feelings. And you're not saying, well, I don't validate your points, but I validate your feelings. You're just like, I get how it is for you. For you, it's like this, and this is going on, and you didn't sleep, and you're worried about finances, and here you come in, and I'll give you an example from my life. I can get really tunnel visioned about working, and I can be really hyper focused on work. And my partner, fair enough, is someone who it's like super meaningful to him if he walks in the door and I don't stop what I'm doing and say, hi, how are you? Like, he has no problem doing that for me. It's totally natural. I don't necessarily need it as much as he does. For him, that's a real important thing. And I can get really just be here and be like, hey, and then just, and depending on what happens next, he might be frustrated with me with that. And then I get defensive. So we're just going up the elevator. I'm defensive. I feel blamed. He's not appreciating all the cool things I was doing on the computer to pay our bills or do something like that for both of us. I'm not gambling. And he's not. So we can go up the elevator and both want validation, or I can go, wow, this isn't fun. I'm going to start with just validating you and not blaming myself, not saying, oh yeah, I'm really bad, I'm really sorry, I'm such a lousy spouse to you. It's really about saying, yeah, I get it. I get what that's like for you. And then really trying to drop into that in my even more and say, yeah, you walk in the door, you had all this going on. You just want to like see my face and feel like you matter. And I won't even barely look up. And that's kind of crushing, and that doesn't mean that I'm this lousy spouse who doesn't care about him, but I'm just putting myself in his position. And if I can stay there long enough, he'll come down. And then he might even say, yeah, but it's not fair for me to kind of be super jerk about that. And I am super lucky that you do all the baking and all this stuff. And I'm kind of like not always grateful for that. And, so it's not that I'm giving up on my side, but it's if I hone in on validating first and really, really like, so he's like, yeah, it is like that. And then I can say, I'm sorry, or, it's not like I can promise to never be like that because it's about sort of longstanding habits on my side, but I can keep trying and he'll feel better that I recognize it. And then I'm modeling what I would love him to do when I'm in big feelings. So either right now or later. And I just find when you dig into serving, it comes back. It comes back around. You're going to find that you going first is always, it's not every relationship, but you chose this person. And we're going to assume that there's enough strength there that when they feel it turn in that really grateful way, they want to give back in sort of a parallel, energetic way.
Okay. So it comes back to what you were originally saying about like keeping, so it's like the bigger picture, trying to kind of like, bring the focus to our side of things, because that's all we can really do. We don't really have control over what's going on over there. We all only have control over what's going on right here. So, flicking whatever switch or changing whatever record needs to be changed over here, and trying not to sort of have the focus over there and blame. So it's a big practice. So again, it's and then also you talked about separating the thoughts from the feelings. So it feels like that's a really big part of this whole thing, is like separating the thoughts from the feelings, or like the ideas or the content or opinions or whatever it is, from the feelings, and really attending to the feelings. And then I like the thing of just like, because that's a real thing. I think for all of us, certainly for me, is that there is this sense of like, well, like I'm not going to give anything until you give first. And it's like, especially if you're like a little bit stubborn, like both of us are, right? The cycle just perpetuates. So it's like we get into these cycles in our relationships of like different patterns. And it's like, if somebody's got to interrupt it. It's kind of like, kids in the schoolyard. It's like, well, he hit me first. No, he hit me. It's like, who cares who hit first? Like, just don't hit. Like, just don't. So is it kind of, okay, so I get it. That's good. So we got to just like interrupt. Somebody's got to break the pattern. Whoever's more resource. I mean, we can only, if everybody's just taking care of their own stuff and trying to, do the thing and be kind and remember that we love one another and, validate one another's feelings, validate the other person's feelings. That's all that we can do. It's like unconditional love. It's like it's like the sun shines, doesn't expect anything back. And that's a beautiful thing. Like that sort of, it's not about getting something back. It's like when we're able to kind of let go of our own thing and like give the thing that we want, like the actual like validation, that actually does nourish ourselves in a way too. And then it just sort of, that's all we can do is shine light. Like, I don't know, is that corny? Anyways, okay, what's the third tip?
It's totally not corny. It's not about martyring your needs and never speaking up about them. It's about getting out of these particularly tricky cycles where that takes over. You still might have really big picture needs to explore and how to deal with those, but you're never gonna, it feels like that. If I step out of the cycle at first, it feels like I'm giving up, but when I do and I get grounded, I'm not giving up my truth. I know my truth. It still needs a voice, but I'm committing to not voicing it from a place of kind of relationship destruction, and the stakes are high in relationship, so it feels important, and we can get into some fight or flight. So it feels like you're giving up, but actually getting, being the person that pulls you out of the cycle. In many, many cases, the relationship foundation is really strong. And so when one person does that, the other person feels so much better. They want to do it too. It's not always, and there might be bigger picture things to solve still, but it's not as much about giving up as you think it is, as it feels like it is when you're trying to kind of find the bad guy. Last point is kind of simple. You reminded me of this because it was something that when I went through the Gottman training, I think I shared with you, and you really have always remembered it. And it's the simplest little rule, that when there's been disconnection, you want to be on the lookout for bids for repair. A bid for repair could be someone saying, hey, let's repair it, but could also be that someone breaks the silence and says, hey, would you like some tea? or some real simple gesture that's their way of coming back into connection. And the research shows that just the skill of always accepting your partner's bid for repair doesn't mean you're shelving all the stuff that hasn't been resolved yet, but you just give it a yes. Because if we're hurt, we can just kind of, nope, can't, I don't want to, it can feel like more correct in our sort of stance to refuse that bid. But it's very hard if someone puts a little energy out, like either very directly or indirectly, and then it gets kind of rebuffed. So it's just one of the skills that when you look at marriages and relationships that last, couples that are good at always kind of giving some yes to the bid for connection is going to go so far. And that doesn't mean that you're ready to snuggle or really, really get close, but you can just, your acceptance could just be like, thank you. Thanks for the tea. I'm still needing a little time, but I appreciate it. Like that's still accepting the energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, for stubborn, I guess I'm stubborn. So I think for me, it's like when I notice these things, there's a thing in me that's like, whatever, dude. But since you told me that, like I do, like I find that's a practice for me. It's like, and then also offering bids more, I just remember that like statistic or that, that thing that you had learned, you had shared it with me. So it's something that I do remember and kind of bring into practice in my relationship. So awesome. I mean, I feel like these are like fairly, relationship is huge, right? It's like, it's humanness, it does, this is even just like relationships with friends and just like in our interactions in community. It's like, these are just basic skills, but it's just such a deep practice actually. So just to kind of like, I don't know, sum it up if I can, to kind of keep the bigger picture in mind, not to get caught up in the details of like the story, I guess it is, and kind of try to like focus on the vibes and the feeling, take care of the feelings. And I think a lot of that is like taking care of our own feelings, slowing down, trying to practice with not like blaming and look like, seeing the problem, the source of our problems and the source of our uncomfortable feelings, even being like outside of ourselves, taking care of those ourselves. And then gratitude, practicing gratitude for our partners, remembering what it is, like on a really like kind of, I think, authentic and deep level of what, we appreciate about them, and that exercise of imagining that they just like one day, whatever, something happens and they disappear. Like what would we miss, or what would we use that exercise as a reminder of like really what we're so grateful for in them. And then the bidding one, always accepting bids. And then, I only get a B, I don't get an A+. What was the other one?
Validating you're noticing if your partner's up the elevator and validating the emotions, and that the emotions are always right, even though they might get to those emotions in a way that you don't agree with. You just start with like, that makes all the sense in the world from your point of view, from I understand you and I know you and I get how that is for you. And yeah, it's really valid, and that's really hard. Thing I didn't say about validation is you can't really go wrong with validation, because if you get it right, they come down the elevator. If they get it wrong, they're like, no, it's not that, it's this. You just validate that. Once you move into the stance of, okay, now I'm just in a validating practice for the next 5 or 10 minutes. We're really stuck and I want to get us unstuck. And it's hard. That's, I guess, the last thing I want to end with is, don't be hard on yourselves that this is hard. Relationships are where the rubber meets the road. We can be so much more mature and solid outside of love relationships, but love relationships have a very special way of unearthing any kind of unfinished business we have. Also kind of bringing out very immature sides of us that we aren't anywhere else. I can't tell you how many times my husband has said, I can't believe you're a counselor. I can't believe you're a couples counselor. In fact, that's just because it's true for all of us. So have compassion with yourself. Just start where you are, and you don't have to get it all right. I think the most heart lifting research that I know is that when it comes to being in tune with your partner, or this concept of attunement, which I won't get into, but you only have to be 20% in accurate attunement to feel really, really attached and met. It doesn't have to be that you're getting it all right. Just start moving in that direction and you'll find the tides just shift. The negative momentum just starts becoming positive momentum. It feels easier and you don't even kind of know why.
Okay. Do you know what I'm thinking right now? I'm thinking, damn, I didn't get that one. I'm going to hear about that later from Sean. He's going to be like, of course, that's the one that you forgot. Okay. Anyways, yes, relationships. I mean, I love it's, deep listening. It's one of my mindfulness practices. It's like listening. And so with deep listening, it's like listening with no other intention than to ease the other person's suffering. So even sometimes when I'm listening, I'm like already thinking about like what I want, like the argument I have, like actually what you're saying is wrong. And I have, or I want to explain something and I'm defensive and I want to, but deep listening is actually just putting that stuff down and just listening to the other person with the sole intention of easing their pain, which is a beautiful act of love. So anyways, this is awesome. Sandy she knows what she's talking about. I know this because she helps me quite a bit. All of my neurotic things.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's a lifelong practice for my life too, but I love this work. I love supporting and teaching in this area. I think, when we look back on our lives at the end of them, one of the most important things is going to be our relationships, and even making incremental positive shifts in those regards is probably the most important thing in the world. So thanks for having me. It's great to spend the morning with you, and thank you to everybody who's, tuning in.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you everybody for joining us. Sandy, I forgot to mention, she's actually in BC. She's not in Alberta. She's in BC. She lives in Nelson, but she's amazing. Look her up. And that's it. Thank you so much. I feel like that was we got some real sort of golden nuggets. They're kind of simple things, but also like things that we can practice forever. And they'll just forever help us to grow and nourish our relationships. Thank you, Sandy. Thanks, everybody. Everybody have beautiful days, and join us back. Come back. We'll be offering more Facebook Live stuff, and maybe we'll have Sandy on again. We'll talk about more stuff. I don't know. We'll just get more like nuggets of wisdom from Sandy on how to be better people. Love you all.